I beg to move this House to now adjourn.
The question is that this House... I'll give everybody a few moments to swap over as we start the adjournment debate.
Thank you, Lady.
Now we're ready to take the adjournment debate. The question is that we do now adjourn, and I call Joy Morrissey.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am grateful for having secured this debate and on this important topic for my constituents and to the Minister for her attendance. And I'm also delighted to see the Honourable Member for Slough in his place. As constituency neighbours, albeit from different parties, we have come together to work closely on this issue for the good of our constituents. I want to talk this evening about the lack of secondary school educational provisions available to my constituents in South Buckinghamshire, particularly in the beautiful village of Burnham and the surrounding area. Burnham is a growing and thriving village which is part of both Buckinghamshire and Slough. It's a unique place, which is why we want to focus the debate tonight on that topic. It is a place where families like to settle for beauty, its community, and its wonderful transport links. But it is a place where children must travel long distances at huge cost to their families to attend a comprehensive secondary school. Burnham is the only community in Buckinghamshire lacking a nearby secondary school alongside its grammar school. This is a situation that is becoming increasingly intolerable, and I hope the Government Minister will join me and the Member for Slough in our joint efforts for change on this topic. Let me start first with a short history to the lack of school provision. In 2019, before I became the Member of Parliament for Beaconsfield, the Department for Education closed the Burnham E-Academy, which was a co-educational non-selective school for 11 to 18-year-olds. This has followed several changes and several challenging Ofsted reports. The school had at one time served more than 600 pupils. As the school was failing, parents were forced to find alternatives for the sake of their children, and roll numbers began to fall, making the school potentially unviable. Instead of serious efforts to turn the school around, it was allowed to fail. This closure was a serious mistake. Yes.
Thank and congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Beaconsfield, for securing today's debate and for her kind words. And indeed, it was a pleasure to join her recently to meet activists campaigning for a new school during our meeting at Burnham Grammar School. Now, as my honourable friend has explained, it was a mistake for the government and Buckinghamshire Council in 2019 to close the non-selective co-educational secondary school. Obviously, the numbers must stack up, but does my honourable friend agree that it is vital to recognise the importance of children receiving good quality local school education, and that it's unfair for my Slough constituents and hers to have to travel at great distances at great expense just so that their children can get that education, and that it should be given due consideration when determining whether a new school is required in Burnham.
May I thank my honourable friend for the intervention, and to say that I think the way that we have been working cross-party is an example of how to move forward past council boundaries, because the issue in Burnham, and just to point out to the Minister, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that Burnham is uniquely it's a large town, but historically it was its own entity, but it is now part of two local authorities. So when you look at the numbers, it is often looking at them through the lens of one local authority or the other, but actually combining those two, working together and submitting a bid to the Department of Education as a joint local authority bid is the way to have the numbers actually be shown and demonstrated so that we can have the secondary school provision that we need. But oh, absolutely.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Lady for Beaconsfield for bringing this forward? And in relation to that, does the Honourable Lady not agree that by putting secondary schools out of reach of local populations, you also close the door to character building, to skill learning, to socially imperative after-school programmes, and this all must be held as weighted when considering educational provision. Close a school, lose a generation of young people.
May I thank the member for his excellent contribution and for always making such excellent contributions to every adjournment debate, a true champion for the backbenches, and thank you. And on the back of that, the people who lost out in the closure of this school are the young people of Burnham and the surrounding areas. And what we would like to see moving forward, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that problem rectified. Since 2019, the young people of Burnham who are not in selective education find themselves caught in a situation of excessively long journeys to schools in Maidenhead and other parts of Buckinghamshire and Slough, as my honourable friend from Slough so eloquently pointed out. And it is unfair for our residents. This is having a significant effect on their mental health, physical well-being, and on the finances of their families. It is absurd and an almost intolerable situation. We have a site for a school that housed a secondary school up until 2019, and it is now hosting the occasional Netflix filming, whilst young people waste hours traveling to schools, and this situation needs to change. And Madam Deputy Speaker, just to say, I was equally as robust in challenging our schools minister before, and spent many a time speaking to Nick Gibb in the tea room, so I'm sure that my honourable member for Slough can follow in my footsteps of finding the minister in the tea room to continue to press this point, formally and informally. And I would ask if the minister would consider meeting with myself and the member for Slough jointly so we can take this issue forward after the debate. And at this point, I want to pay tribute to the campaign group for Burnham Secondary School. Since my election in December 2019, I have been pleased to work alongside them and local families in trying to right this wrong. They are at the epicenter of what makes community campaign groups so inspiring, totally dedicated to making their community better. And may I thank the local councillors and the parish councillors and my honourable member opposite to work together to put the needs of our residents first. Let me now set out why the case for a secondary school in Burnham is clear, compelling, and urgent. We know that education is the single silver bullet that can determine the life chances of young people. But for the young people of Burnham and South Buckinghamshire, we are placing an enormous barrier in their way, impacting their mental and physical health from long journeys and placing them at higher risk of educational disengagement. We also know that SEND provision in South Buckinghamshire is significantly underserved. Just before the election, I was delighted by the DFE announcement of a new SEND school for Buckinghamshire. I hope the minister will tonight recommit to that school and support my calls for it to be placed in South Buckinghamshire. It's for the whole county, but I would love to see it in South Buckinghamshire. Hear, hear. A reopened Burnham Secondary School represents a perfect opportunity to provide not only 11 to 16-year-olds non-selective education, but increased SEND provision and a thriving sixth form. A true...
Will my friend give way?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is making an excellent speech about education leading her constituency. Does she agree with me that the example of the work done by the London Borough of Hillingdon in the village of Hayfield in my constituency, where an underutilised secondary school has slightly reduced in size as part of a multi-academy trust, and the site is being used now to create dual use with both secondary mainstream comprehensive education and also a brand new SEND school at the same location.
May I thank the honourable member for that excellent intervention as the example and sort of gold standard for which we would like to do and move forward in how we can make sure that there is SEND provision and also comprehensive school provision in our area. And finding dual use for those facilities is really the way forward. And we're trying to look, Madam Deputy Speaker, at every option and working cross-party, cross-local authorities, making sure that we have volunteers to find a solution, hopefully following in the footsteps of Hillingdon, that works for all of our residents. One of the frustrations that I and the campaign group have faced is the loop of accountability avoidance. And because we are on the border of many local authorities, we border London, and we have different provision for our students that is actually different than the rest of London, and we're just outside, but we border each other, and so this endless loop of accountability is often difficult to close. The department says it is for the local authorities to make the case, but oftentimes it seems that there is a loop between the local authority not working together for the collective demand because of their individual legal accountabilities, despite the practical reality that Slough and Burnham and all of Buckinghamshire border each other, and the two local primary schools are in very close proximity to the site. At the Burnham Grammar School, this is proven by the fact that half of the pupils are from Slough. I quote from a recent FOI reply sent to our campaign group. Any projects to try to evidence demand to reopen a new school on the Burnham site should not include pupils attending in Slough, regardless of how close the school may be to Buckinghamshire. This is just bureaucracy triumphing common sense. The campaign group and I have taken it upon ourselves to look at the data and make the case, because it seems no one else will. And I thank the member for Slough for joining us in that and trying to proactively work together to bring forth the evidence of both local authorities for the demand and the need for the pupil and for the secondary school. Even before I turn to the housing expansion, they can make the case for a minimum of 5 forms of entry from the local primary school. We also know that Beach's Learning and Development Trust, which delivers Burnham Grammar School, could take on a Burnham Secondary School within their umbrella trust. We have a site for a school, we have demand across both local authority boundaries, and we have a trust able to take on the school. All we lack is the will of the educational establishment. In South Buckinghamshire, we now have significant housing targets on our way. As a separate point, if something is built on the Greenbelt, be of no doubt I will oppose it tooth and nail, but I support the case for more housing in the right location with the right infrastructure. Burnham and the surrounding areas are growing. Slough is growing. Many people want to move to both areas because of the excellent transport links and their ability to come into London, and our area and population are growing, and the housing demands mean that the population will continue to increase. Buckinghamshire is one of the highest housing demands put on it, more than any other local authority. So to make the case, we will need more provisional places for students because we are going to be building more houses from central government's demands on the county. So on that front, it simply strengthens our argument why we need the increased levels of educational provision, because we will not have the infrastructure in place to support the new housing that is going to be asked for us to be built from central government. We also have the Elizabeth line that was added that's attracting commuter families to the area, and we face more housing coming, but without the infrastructure of a new school to support the area. It is time to make sure that the secondary schools to support this demand are there and ready for our residents. It is time for the education system to come together to resolve this problem. In the same way that myself and the Honourable Member for Slough have put aside party political differences for the good of our communities to work together, so the education system needs to put aside artificial boundaries and work together. It needs leadership from ministers and the Department of Education to bring local authorities together, to support the proper analysis of data across local authority boundaries, and I urge the Minister to join me and the Honourable Member for Slough and the local community in helping to make a new secondary school for Burnham, South Buckinghamshire and Slough a reality. Thank you.
I call the Minister, Catherine McKinnell. Minister.
Thank you, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Beaconsfield on securing this important debate, and I know she has been a champion for children in South Buckinghamshire and for every child, being able to secure a school place that enables them to achieve and thrive. And this government recognises how important it is that every child gets a great education at a good school in their area, and we work very closely with local authority colleagues to achieve this, including in Buckinghamshire. Local authorities, including Buckinghamshire, have a statutory duty to ensure that there are sufficient school places for children in their area. I appreciate the Honourable Lady has referenced that in her contribution. And so to support local authorities to deliver on that statutory duty, the Department provides capital funding through the Basic Need Grant for mainstream school places, and funding is based on local authorities' own pupil forecasts and school capacity data. They also receive high needs provision capital allocation to invest in places for children and young people with special educational needs or who require alternative provision. And I know the Honourable Lady has specifically mentioned that, and I will come to it shortly. The Department engages with local authorities on a regular basis to review their plans for creating additional primary places and pre-16 secondary school places, and to consider alternatives where necessary. And when local authorities are experiencing difficulties, the Department offers support and advice, including through the Pupil Place Planning Advisor. So I hope the Honourable Lady finds it reassuring that all of this support is in place. At local authority level, Buckinghamshire is forecast to have an increasing surplus of primary school places, especially in the year of entry reception and in Key Stage 1. There are, however, some areas of primary place pressure, including at Gerrards Cross and the Chalfonts in the south of the county. At secondary phase, Buckinghamshire is forecast to have a small, slightly declining surplus. However, in common with the primary phase, underlying the local authority-wide picture, there are variations in place pressure, and the academically selective element of secondary education in Buckinghamshire adds an additional element of complexity in place planning, as does the cross-border movement into schools in neighbouring local authorities, which I know the Honourable Lady and the Honourable Gentleman, the MP for Slough, my honourable friend, also referenced. Nearly £1.5 billion has been announced to support local authorities to create mainstream school places that will be needed over the current and the next 2 academic years, up to and including academic year September 2026. And the funding is not ring-fenced, subject to conditions set out in the published grant determination letter, nor is it time-bound, meaning local authorities are free to use this funding to best meet their local priorities. They can use it to fund places in new schools or through expansions of existing schools, and can work with any school in their local area, including academies and free schools.
On that point,
I'll happily give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I wanted just to ascertain, in her and the Department's determination for a new school in Burnham on the boundary of Slough and South Bucks, will the fact that we have a hugely increasing population in Slough and South Bucks, as well as the high need for SEND provision, will those factors be factored in to ensure that the right decision is reached for a new school?
So the Honourable Gentleman raises some important points, and indeed these are all factors that Buckinghamshire Local Authority and Slough Local Authority, where relevant, will have to take into consideration when determining how to use their allocation. So Buckinghamshire Council has been allocated just below £11.3 million to support the provision of new mainstream school places that they feel they will need over the current and the next 2 academic years, up to including September 2026. And we've also announced, in reference to the comments from the Honourable Gentleman, £740 million in high needs capital for 25-26 to support children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, or who require alternative provision. And we will confirm the specific local authority allocations later in the spring, but the important point is that this new funding can be used to adapt classrooms to make them more accessible for children with special educational needs. It can be used, I'll just finish this point, it can be used to create specialist facilities within mainstream schools that could deliver more intensive support to adapt it to meet pupils' needs, alongside continuing to provide places to support pupils in special schools with the most complex needs. I give way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for giving way. I wonder whether she'll commit to working with colleagues in the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to review the impact that home-to-school transport rules have on the situation. In Hillingdon, there's around a 20% vacancy rate due to falling pupil numbers. All London boroughs contribute to Transport for London, therefore transport to school on London public transport is free. But if Buckinghamshire were wishing to take advantage of those vacancies, then it would be a general fund cost to council taxpayers to bring those children to schools in Hillingdon. Now, clearly, in the efficiency of providing these places, it may well be that looking at those cross-border transport issues, we could produce a beneficial outcome for my constituency neighbour and also for the schools that would thereby benefit from additional pupils.
The Honourable Gentleman raises an important point, and it is one that as a department we are very focused on, but indeed do need to work with local authorities in order to deliver on. The department's home to school travel policy, the aim is to make sure that no child is prevented from accessing education because of a lack of transport. Local authorities are required to arrange free travel for children of compulsory school age who attend their nearest school but can't walk there because of the distance, or because of a special educational need, a disability or a mobility problem, or because their route isn't safe. And there are additional rights to free travel to low-income households as well, to make sure they can exercise school choice. However, I recognise the challenge that the Honourable Gentleman raises, and this is one that we are part of the reason why, and indeed he jumped up as I was talking about the investment that we would like to see in mainstream provision to make it more suitable and to adapt it where necessary, to have much greater inclusion of children with special educational needs and disabilities so that they can be educated in their local area wherever possible with their peers, and indeed that will get better outcomes for those children, but also it will tackle some of the challenges that he quite rightly identifies in relation to the growing challenge of school transport. The Honourable Lady mentioned in particular a specific request for confirmation on a local special school application, and indeed she tempts me to get ahead of announcements that will be made in due course, and they are under consideration. And it's obviously important that where children do have highly complex needs, that we do have those specialist school places available in the right place for the children that need them. We are committed to ensuring that all schools do cooperate with their local authority on school admissions and place planning to help ensure that there are sufficient school places where they're needed. And schools and academy trusts are expected to work collaboratively and constructively with local authorities and other key partners on place planning. We recently reinforced this expectation through the revised Making Significant Changes to an Academy guidance, and to further strengthen it, we're legislating to require all schools and local authorities to cooperate on admissions and place planning. This new duty will aim to foster much greater cooperation between schools and local authorities on these important areas, as well as providing a backstop for addressing serious failures where cooperation just isn't happening. We're also legislating to make changes to the legal framework for opening new schools. We'll end the legal presumption that new schools should be academies in favour of prioritising any local offer which meets the needs of children and families, allowing proposals for other types of schools to be put forward where a new school is needed, including proposals from local authorities themselves. And these changes better align local authorities' responsibility to secure sufficient school places with their ability to open new schools. So the government is absolutely focused on the quality of education, the experience that children are getting at school, rather than the name above the door. And all schools have an important role to play in driving high and rising standards so that we can achieve ensuring that every child can thrive at school. And indeed, this will support local authorities to be able to make the decisions that are right for the children in their area. Because we want all children to be able to attend a high-quality school of their parents' choice wherever possible. In 2024, 98.5% of children in Buckinghamshire were offered a place at one of their parent or carers' top 3 preferred primary schools, and just over 9 out of 10, 91.1%, received an offer of their first preference. And at secondary phase, 91.2% of pupils in Buckinghamshire received an offer at one of their parent or carers' top 3 preferred secondary schools, with 3/4, 75.8%, receiving an offer at their first preference. So I want to thank my honourable colleague for bringing this matter forward today and for the contributions that we've had from other members in the debate this evening. It clearly is so important that a child is able to access a school place, ideally in their local community, that will enable them to achieve and to thrive. And I appreciate the case that the Honourable Lady is making, but it is clear that it is to Buckinghamshire Local Authority that the case must be made. And the government will continue to work with local authority colleagues. It is their statutory duty to ensure sufficient mainstream school places are available, and this includes providing funding through the Basic Need Grant. We'll provide continued support through our pupil place planning advisors, and we are introducing new legislation to require all schools and local authorities to cooperate on admissions and place planning so that every child in every local community can have a good local school.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as that opinion say aye? The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order.